It was my first year at Blackwood University. The sky was already gray when I finished unpacking in my dim, narrow dorm room in Raven Hall. My parents had just left, and the emptiness felt heavier than I expected. That same evening, my roommate finally arrived. The moment he stepped in, I knew something about him was off, like a television tuned to the wrong frequency. I introduced myself as Isaac, offering a hand. He stared at it, confused, then gave a limp shake like a cold, dead fish. "Oh," he mumbled, his voice too flat. I had to ask for his name. "Simon," he replied without expression. I tried making small talk, but he only replied with awkward yes or no, sometimes breaking into an eerie, misplaced giggle. Within minutes, the silence between us was complete, just the hum of our laptops and a creeping sense of discomfort. I already hated the thought of spending a whole semester with Simon. I figured he was just weird. Shy. But I would soon learn he was something far stranger. After exploring the campus and meeting a few friendly students, I returned to my dorm that first night to find Simon exactly where I left him, sitting rigidly on his bed, eyes locked on his laptop screen. I greeted him, and as expected, he didn't respond. It was only 9:30 p.m., but I was exhausted and turned off my lamp, hoping sleep would come quickly. It didn't. Simon stayed on his laptop until well past 3 a.m. The moment he shut it, I finally drifted off, only to wake up again maybe an hour later. The blinds were open, and pale moonlight poured in, casting silver shapes across the room. That's when I saw him. Simon. Sitting at the edge of his bed, his body hunched forward, eyes wide, silently watching me. I sat up in shock. "Simon, what the hell are you doing?" I whispered. He blinked slowly and whispered back, "Sorry," before lying down. The next morning, he was gone. First time I'd seen him leave the room. That Saturday was orientation. The first weekend at Blackwood was supposed to be exciting, full of games and student mixers. While my group was walking past the school's overgrown botanical garden, I heard two students ahead of me whispering. "What's that guy doing?" one asked. I looked where they were pointing. Behind the hedges, nearly hidden, was Simon. He was crouched in the soil, rubbing the bark of a tree with his bare hand, his eyes unfocused. Our orientation leader didn't notice. I kept walking but muttered, "That's my roommate," hoping to sound casual, and maybe make some friends. The two students looked at me with surprise, then offered awkward laughs and apologies. I didn't blame them. I made plans with them for that night, and later that day, the university emailed to say they'd found me a new roommate. Things were finally looking up. That night, before going out, I returned to the dorm to find Simon sitting in my desk chair, facing the door. "Hey, what's up?" I asked. "Nothing," he said too flatly. I sat on my bed and opened my laptop, only to realize all my emails were open. Some I hadn't even read yet. I checked my folders. They'd clearly been opened. "Did you go through my laptop?" I asked. "No," he snapped, far too quickly. I knew he was lying. I didn't push. I was leaving tomorrow anyway. When I looked for my pajamas, I noticed my clothes had been shuffled too. Something was wrong with him, something I didn't want to uncover. Even now, years later, I still get flashes of that night, of Simon. It was like some parasite had burrowed into my memory. After transferring to Rathmore College for my second year, I managed to carve out a decent social life. I found a solid group of friends, and most weekends we'd be out doing something. One Friday night in mid-October, when our group didn't have plans, two of my closer friends, Mason and Ty, suggested we hang out at the Hollowmere Preserve. It was this isolated stretch of woods behind the lake, a place barely anyone on campus knew about. Perfect for a fire and a few beers. Sometimes, people would show up there to smoke or experiment with whatever they had, but it was rare. That night, it was just us, a small fire, and the kind of laughter only alcohol and good company can bring. We sat talking about life, relationships, dreams, all the stuff we thought mattered. The fire crackled. Mason laughed so hard at something Ty said that he rolled over, howling, leaves stuck to his hoodie. Then suddenly, Ty went quiet. "Shoo," he hissed. We froze, the night now too quiet. Then, we heard it, crunching leaves. Distant, but deliberate. Like boots. Panic set in fast. We hurled our beer bottles into the lake and stuffed the rest into Mason's backpack. None of us were of legal age, and the stories of campus security making surprise sweeps through the woods weren't just rumors. But something felt different about this. The sound was slow. Intentional. The Hollowmere Preserve was too deep and forgotten for someone to just be passing by. Then came the sharp crack of a branch snapping, too close. We looked at each other, wide-eyed. No one had the guts to yell out. Instead, we sat like prey, hoping not to be noticed. The steps were circling us. At first, it was subtle, leaves crunching in a half-moon shape around our fire. But then it became clear, whatever it wasn't random. It was moving around us. Hunting. We joked nervously, like characters in a horror movie trying to downplay the dread. But when something heavy thudded into our camp, none of us laughed. A large branch, thrown from the darkness, landed right beside the fire. Ty ran without hesitation. Mason and I stayed frozen, half laughing, half horrified. Then, another branch came. This one hit Mason square in the face. I grabbed his arm and yanked him up. We didn't speak, we just ran. We bolted back toward the dorms, heart pounding, crashing through brush and darkness. When we finally reached the cracked pavement that separated the woods from campus, we stopped to breathe. And that's when we heard it, footsteps. Slow, but unmistakable. Someone was following. We sprinted again and didn't stop until we were back on the second floor of Greystone Hall. Ty was already there, shaken but safe. We all peered out the window toward the edge of the preserve, and there, pacing just outside the tree line, was a figure. Tall, slow-moving, drifting back into the woods each time a car passed. Then gone. Just like that. We sat in Ty's room and laughed it off, beer bottles in hand, convincing ourselves it had been someone messing with us. But the next morning, we all knew the truth, we had been watched. Hunted, maybe. We never went back to Hollowmere after dark. I've had my share of bad memories, but nothing haunts me like that night in the Tefret dungeon. That's what we ended up calling it later, after everything that happened. It was the kind of place you'd imagine finding in an urban legend, not real life. But it was real, and I lived it. It started off like any other dumb decision made during freshman year at Moorfield University. My roommate, Adam, had this plan to rush a bunch of frats. He wasn't picky, he just wanted in somewhere. I tagged along, not because I cared, but because I didn't want to be alone in the dorm on a Thursday night. The frat we went to that night was basically off campus, tucked into one of the decaying parts of town where the sidewalks were broken and streetlights flickered like they were giving up. The place didn't look like a frat house, it looked abandoned, except for the muffled bass shaking the windows. We knocked and were greeted by this sweaty guy with jaundiced eyes and an ill-fitting shirt. He waved us in with a stained Solo cup and a grin that sent a shiver down my spine. The party inside was just a dense pocket of sweaty bodies and hostility. Barely any girls, just clusters of awkward, overweight guys, many foreign, none friendly. The air was thick and wrong. After about 20 minutes of trying to breathe through the heat and avoid eye contact with anyone, I nudged Adam to leave. But a wall of guys blocked the exit. We stayed. I kept drinking the watery beer they had in a trash bin and told myself I'd forget this night by morning. That's when he came over, a large guy with a strange stare and a tiny glass bottle pinched between two fingers. "This'll mess you up," he said, grinning. I fake laughed and took it. I drank it, mostly to get rid of him, but he didn't leave. He just watched me. Then came the dizziness. The lights dimmed. My balance warped. I remember trying to speak, but my voice didn't sound like mine. Then everything went black. When I came to, I was in a pitch-dark room, lying on a bed. There was music thudding through the walls, same party, same house, but this room was different. The air was cold. Stale. I could just barely make out a desk, some old furniture, and a closet door. Nothing moved, until I heard it, the sound of plastic crinkling. From the closet. Like someone stepping on a bag, accidentally. My breath caught. I didn't think. I just ran. I tore through that door, bolted down the stairs, found Adam, and shoved us both out of there without saying a word to the group of guys huddled by the exit. In the car, I told Adam everything. He nearly called the cops. I stopped him, too risky, too messy. He asked me the question that haunted me the most, was I assaulted? I didn't think so. I was still dressed. No pain, no signs. But I had no way of knowing for sure. And the time. I'd only been out for 10 minutes, max. Whatever they gave me must have been weak, or not meant for me. Either way, I got out. And I never went back. But that house, that thing in the closet, still claws at the back of my mind. Later that semester, I moved into a single dorm. Room 312A, tucked at the very end of the third floor, around a sharp turn from the rest of the hallway. It felt private, safe. I liked it. I could chill with friends, do my work, sleep in peace. For a while, it was peaceful. But one night while studying for bio, I heard it. A light tapping at the door. It was so faint I almost ignored it. I called out, "Come in," but nothing happened. I opened the door. No one. I peeked around the corner. Empty hallway. I figured someone was just being dumb. Left the door open. No one returned. The next night, after I turned out my lamp, the tapping came again, this time louder. More like knocking. I called out again. Silence. I jumped out of bed and flung open the door. Nothing. I ran down my little corridor, turned the corner, no one. It happened again the next night. But this time, it was banging. I hesitated. Then I opened the door, again, no one. But as I sprinted to the main hallway, I caught a glimpse. The back of someone, disappearing around the far corner. I chased them. They turned into the bathroom at the end of the hall. I wasn't scared then, not yet. I threw the door open. The lights were off. I flipped the switch. Still no one. 2 stalls, both closed. I dropped to my knees to peek underneath, and that's when I saw the boots. Black, heavy, sitting under one of the stalls. Not worn, just placed. Like props in some sick joke. Then I heard the laugh. It was raspy. Guttural. A madman's laugh, deep and raw, not of this world. That's when the fear set in. My legs betrayed me. I ran. I didn't look back. Slammed the dorm door shut and jumped into bed, texting anyone I could think of. No one replied. Everyone was asleep. That knocking returned once more, louder than ever, but I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It went on for 30 seconds before finally stopping. The next day, I asked everyone on the floor if they were screwing with me. Nobody admitted to anything. And I believed them. They seemed too genuinely confused. Too sincere. But I'll never forget those boots. Or the laugh. Or the fact that whoever, or whatever, was out there wasn't a student.